Yeah. Okay, everybody, why don't we call to order at 5:05 this evening? We could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which stands one nation under God, justice for all. Right on to public comment in hybrid format. We have an opportunity for both in-person and virtual comment. I don't see anybody with us this evening for in-person comment, so Devin, we can go ahead and open that up for public comment virtually. You can just raise your hand if you're interested in providing public comment.
Not seeing any hands.
All right.
We're all set.
All good. Thank you very much. So we will move on to minutes. So could I get a motion to approve the attached September 14th, 2022 minutes? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next order of business is correspondence received 9/13 to 10/7. So nothing received, but I'll always take the opportunity to remind everybody that we do have the contact form on the front page of our website. That for correspondence, questions, comments, thoughts on anything regarding the building committee. And we'll make sure we include those in the agenda and provide responses as soon as we can. So we'll move right on to reports, which is item F. First is chair report, nothing in addition other than updates that we're going to hear tonight that I'm going to report out on. So we'll move right on to town council liaison report.
There's really not a lot to report on, and I won't steal Chris's thunder because really the 1928 building is really anything of substance that we've discussed at this point. So we'll wait for Chris.
Any questions for Johnny? All right, so we will move on. Board of Education liaison report.
I don't know if there's anything to report, either the same.
Counselor, any questions for Sarah? Anything?
I don't have anything. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing. I have to fix something, but nothing to share for the report.
Great, thank you. All right, so we will move right on to 1928 building committee liaison report.
Now the thunder, right?
I know.
Okay, at the last town council meeting, the 1928 committee reported out, presented along with Chris Nardi, the architect Silver Petroselli. Long story short, essentially reporting in on the two options, option one and option two. Option one, as you may recall, is essentially the 1928 building. And option two is the 1928 building plus 1952 structure. The recommendation coming out of the committee at the time and to present it to the town council was to proceed just with option one and not proceed with option two, taking into consideration a lot of the issues that would be confronted architecturally, structurally, implications on the site plan, this project, cost and everything. So the committee, the council at that point in time, adopted unanimously to eliminate option two from further consideration by the 1928 building committee. It recharged the building committee, essentially directing the committee and Silver Petroselli to complete a conceptual design with preliminary pricing for the renovation of the building, which includes the current band room as well as potential additions. And we'll see how that works out working with Silver Petroselli. They recognize that there's a certain degree of flexibility that will be required for us to work with both the council and this committee, the site plan and our project is working hand in hand with this project and the impacts it may have. We're charged to present, the 1920 committee is charged to present the conceptual design and preliminary pricing to the town council for consideration by January of 2023, at which time the town council, sort of standard operating procedure, will review that information, the financial information, including the tax impact, the option of long-term financing, anticipated debt schedules, and ultimately to determine the net municipal costs and the project budget and report back and give that back to the 1928 committee, who will then we will be recharged to complete the schematic design and project cost estimates to bring this project to the referendum. We did meet last night as a committee. Silver Petroselli at that point in time did provide a conceptual design. I'd be remiss probably to give too much detail on it because it's gonna be so fluid at this point. This is really just a first crack at this. It was essentially to bring a lot of the functionality of the town hall up to the building, but for the probate court, tried to have some, meet the programmatic needs and have, some, adjacencies with sort of the functionality of the town hall. So, keeping things like community rec, social services together, town manager, finance, public works, all together. But the initial reaction obviously was there were some things that needed to be adjusted. And so we're going to continue to work on that. But I think the positive thing was the initial feedback from a lot of the stakeholders is that there wasn't a lot of square footage asks. I think the program, the building's going to work, as we just tweak it as we go along. As we'll continue to do that, we talked generally about communications. We're going to put out a town newsletter, hopefully next week or so, to then have a community meeting scheduled in November. There's a lot of fluid nature to this because of the election day, the Thanksgiving holiday. But we're going to get out a newsletter providing the information to the town. Hopefully, I probably should say that it'll be in there, but www.1928building.org is our website. And so that's up and running, and you can go there now, continue to be updated with FAQs and the like. And our goal at least is, by January, but is to, in December, to get back to the committee, hopefully a little bit early, but that's where we are right now. So, any questions?
Big update.
Was that fun?
Yeah, that was impressive. Impressive. Didn't let us down. Any questions? But that was a lot of information just on timing.
Yeah.
Obviously more to come, so I just want to make sure.
But I think, good takeaway is we will be working hand in hand with this.
Yeah.
committee, because obviously the building will have impact on the site and what we're doing. So we will be working hand in hand with this committee.
Do you have thoughts or anything else? So we can have a conversation on our next communications meeting on, okay, now we have
Yeah.
an additional website. We just want to make sure there's a link between the two, but that people also aren't confused as to where to go if they want to find some information. Right. Any other questions for Chris? We're good? Great. All right, why don't we go on to report number 5, owner's rep report.
Simple report for today. We'll continue with the bidding process. We received 40% of the bids today, on top of the bids that we received last week. ONG is in the process of analyzing each of those bids. They were reviewed for conformity with bid requirements. So they were open, but now they'll be meeting with all of the low bidders and evaluating each of the contractors, creating recommendations going forward. But at this stage, we have about 80% of the bids in hand. Balance of bids are due next week. And for your next meeting, we'll be prepared to present to you where we are with all of the budgets and the bid packages.
An update, excuse me, on the state invoices. We went on to the core CT website, and this project is actually not loaded yet on their end. It's kind of like setting up a bank account. Once it's set up, then you can draw from it. So I'm working with Michelle to get that hopefully set up and finalized by the end of the month, so we can actually submit the payment. We have all the invoices, we have everything. We'll include these now tonight. We'll just tack them on to the package. But unfortunately, we can't do anything until she actually loads the account.
It's a matter of like backlog versus like they're missing something. No.
She just hasn't done it. She hasn't done it, and they're rolling out a new HVAC program, or grant application, I should say, and she's been swamped with that. So it's just trying to keep her focused to actually do it.
All right. Any questions for Chris or Mike on
Chris, just curious, I mean, I know that it's a rolling process and you've reviewed for conformity, but is there any holistic 10,000 foot view of commentary on how the bids are looking coming in generally?
I think that'll be Nelson's update
Oh,
next.
okay.
We'll let him comment on where they are.
Anything else as far as owner's rep, that we'll get into some more details there, getting overall where, at least where we are at the moment. All right, so why don't we go on to architect report, if there is anything.
Just on one, Archana is-
Okay. Okay, great. I guess you can hear me now because I just unmuted myself. I was also just promoted to a panelist. I actually have very little to report. We did finish the last round of addenda. I see Archana is on the line as well. Archana finished the last addenda that went out. And so that will be part of the final bid package that you will receive prior to the next meeting. I believe the final bid date, the final package is next week. Is that right, Laurel? Yes, she's nodding affirmatively. Okay. So we're on track to deliver the bids as promised. That's really the extent of my report. We're as anxious as everyone else to see the final numbers.
Thanks for Richard or Archana at this point. I know it's not a lot to go on, but we're just moving through the process. All right, so let's go on.
Right.
And report.
I'll let Laurel,
We got Laurel to go first on
yeah,
timeline.
she should be on the line.
I'm here, if you can hear me.
Yes.
You can hear Laurel.
Hi, so yes, we're still in the bidding process. We received a whole chunk of bids this afternoon. Nelson was kind enough to read them. Behind the scenes, I've been working with Joe Sweatke to make sure that we both are receiving the same emailed bids. I ended up receiving what we thought we had gotten no bids for one particular bid package. He had the bid, but I didn't, so we'll be acknowledging that. So still just vetting everything. I'm spending all week this week scoping the critical trades that we got in last week. And then again, we have the bid that we had extended until next week. So just in the heat, I'm in the prime heat of what I do. Everything is on 100 miles an hour, trying to keep it all straight. And then we will be giving you an update, a formal update at your next building committee meeting with where everything has shaken out. So we got bid results, pretty much good bid results for most of the trade packages. There's a couple that we're light on. Again, we're going to analyze, see what we can do, what we're going to do about that. But again, it's hot off the press this afternoon. So, I don't want to comment any more than we received a vast majority of the rest of the bids.
I could give just a brief update on phase one construction. Next week timeframe, I don't have a specific date, but we will be bringing in the job trailers. We'll be connecting the power. So by the end of this month, we should have the working office for phase two set up. And that's pretty much it for phase one. There's not much going on right now. Just a few things here and there behind the construction fence.
Anybody want to just kind of give a quick response to this question on overall how we feel or where we are at the moment? I know there's a lot more information vetting, a lot of work.
Yeah,
we need to do,
what
but-
Laurel said, we have to vet all the numbers out. So next week we'll have that having answer. The raw numbers, it's just the raw numbers.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions? All right. We actually we have communications subcommittee, we ended up canceling our communications meeting just prior to this one again, as we walk through, kind of get through bids and kind of identify next steps for, I think we should just kind of hold tight on overall communications and planning, just so that we're completely, have a good understanding of what we have ahead of us. So, not that it's not important, and we certainly want to stay engaged, but we also want to make sure we have all the information at hand to move forward. So nothing additional on communications subcommittee, financial report, and no remarks today. Nothing additional on financial report. All right. Any other questions or thoughts? We can look for more information on anything before we go on to new business. Okay. All right, so go right on to new business. And our first order of business, can I have a motion to approve the following invoice package for Farmington Central Offices state project number 052-0077BE. And as a note on any of these, the invoices were previously approved by the financial subcommittee at their October 7th meeting. So if you remember, as we're walking through this process, there's always a pre-review. It's analysis done on these invoices before they're brought in front of the committee. So if I have a motion, please.
Motion. Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. So we'll move right on to item G2. So can I motion to approve the following invoice package for Farmington High School State Project Number 052-0076N. Again, same note applies. Invoices were previously approved by the financial subcommittee in their October 7th, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, we're going to move right on to item G3. So I'm going to kind of read this out a little bit, and then we'll have some more discussion if we need to do some clarification on this. So, can I have a motion to approve the appointment of a decision-making group with a threshold amount of $25,000? We'll just put that motion out there, and we'll get some more detail around discussion.
Motion. Second.
All right, so we will open this up for discussion. So as the note that we have here in our agenda, approval of this motion will authorize the decision-making group to make decisions up to a value of $25,000 without FHS building committee approval. This will allow for flexibility in making necessary changes to keep the project on schedule. You can see the decision-making group that we have here is a nice representation of our major stakeholders within the project. I do want to put some clarification around this. Nelson, by all means, jump in on this, because I know this is kind of critical to the work that you're doing. But really what we want to make sure is that we are moving quickly on making decisions as appropriate. We want to make sure that our partners have the information they need and have not only a point person, but a team of people that can help them make quick and accurate decisions to keep the construction schedule moving forward. So the decision-making group you see here is obviously Kat in the role of assistant town manager, acting as a point of contact for the whole group. And you can see we'll attend a very critical OAC meeting, which I think will be on a weekly basis. This is kind of playing a critical role also within the town requirement that we have a main point of contact in the town manager office. Sam as director of facilities for the district, Scott, assistant superintendent of finance and operations, so being a key point of contact for not only FHS, but beyond and the impacts there. Johnny Carrier as our representative from the building committee as well as town council, and then Russ as the town engineer. So that being a good representation of the key stakeholders to make some very quick decisions that need to happen, as well as understanding critical issues, concerns, and anything else that needs to be discussed further, and then maybe even be brought back to this committee for further discussions. Does the concept make sense to everybody as to why we kind of need this focus group? Did I leave anything out? Does that represent what we need to get done? Does that make sense to everybody? Just a different stage of the project and a different type of communication required to make that happen. Okay, so really what we have here as far as approval is that $25,000 threshold. So really what that's allowing this group to do is make decisions to move the project forward with anything that has a cost underneath that threshold. Okay, does not mean that if there's something critical that falls underneath the threshold, they still need building committee approval or would like a further discussion that wouldn't happen. But this is kind of a way for us to make sure that we really can move the project forward if required and that we're not, getting stuck on things unnecessarily. So
And all the changes the full documentation, the change orders will be processed with all the backup so that state reimbursement, it's not like if it's under that threshold, it doesn't have the appropriate backup. Everything will be processed like any other normal change. And they can always defer to the building committee if they feel it's, a better decision to be made by the whole building committee.
that makes sense to everybody?
And just to make sure, all changes will ultimately end up in a report presented here and voted on here in aggregate. But as we're moving along and things are moving at a fast pace, we'll have a limit to keep the project moving. But it isn't that those changes won't still follow the same process, documentation, and still end up in a larger change order and still end up in the process and approved here.
Yeah, they'll essentially be ratified by the full committee. This is just a way to expedite it.
So full transparency, everything will still be the same. It's just a matter of, good way to say it, to expedite the process. Yeah.
Just conceptually all on board, how was the $25,000 figure? How do we reach that? Does it provide the flexibility and the ability for you to achieve your intended goals? Is that a good number? I guess.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it was actually a big point of deliberation.
Okay, yeah, no, that's.
Around, because I think, and again, Sam, I want, please join it, because Sam has this experience kind of in this decision-making process. I don't know if you want to give kind of your thoughts and feedback on it.
The thought is that if it's much more than $25,000, it's probably something that's creeping up, and we have the ability to come to the building committee as a whole. It's a larger thing that we're putting together documentation over a period of time, and then we're able to come to the building committee. But there are sometimes those smaller things on site that pop up, and we really want a decision to move forward. I think if that group all agrees, this makes a lot of sense. The committee's clearly going to agree with it, and we can move forward with it. In previous projects, I've had this capacity to make these kinds of decisions. It was almost like a threshold amount, a lower threshold amount with a group that I would go and speak to, similar to this group as a whole anyway. So like a 5 and a 50. But I think the thought on the 25 was that it's large enough that we can address anything that might pop up on a daily basis, but not so large. So it's up the way.
No, I think that's a great question, because we have the same budget of, where's the best threshold there, and how do you scale that against a project like this? When you're talking about something of this size and scale, what's the best approach? And I think this is also something we could revisit if we have absolutely had to too. So I mean, it's a threshold that we're voting on and understanding as a committee, so that we all understand how the students are going to move forward. But for some reason, we have some additional conversations required.
Also, all the professionals were asked what we thought as well. And we were all pretty much uniform about that was a reasonable level, high enough to keep things moving, but not so high to bring a decision forward that should be brought forward. And a lot of decisions aren't necessarily dollar related. I mean, if they have a dollar associated with it, sometimes it's a decision, not so critical as to the value. Something comes up, whether it's a could be storm coming in and we want to do extra provisions to prepare for it. And we're gonna do a 4AC or there's an event on campus that might require some preparation from the construction team to accommodate and some directions given. It just gives us the authority to take that direction and do something.
Makes sense. Everybody, any other questions? Anybody online have any questions or thoughts they want to share? All right, so motion is on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Right, motion passes. So we'll move on to final piece of new business. So could I have a motion to schedule an FHS building committee meeting on October 20th at 5 PM, location to be determined. Open it up for discussion. We did kind of mention this a little bit last week as a potential for making sure we have flexibility. We have some significant decisions to make coming up here. We've got a lot of information that's going to be coming out us in the next week or so. We want to make sure that we have the appropriate time to discuss that and continue conversations if necessary. So if you remember, we added a meeting on the 19th, a couple meetings back. That's the critical meeting that we just discussed as far as having a really good handle on where we are from a bid perspective, but just to be on the safe side and make sure that we have it on the calendar and we get people to schedule appropriately, we want to make sure we add this meeting on the 20th. If everything goes great and the 19th is easy, we will go ahead and cancel, but it's nice to have the option if we do.
Just note that I won't be there if it happens. I have a code presentation I have to get up for. Apparently there's 60 people coming, I can't bring that. I'm a presenter, so.
All right, we'll allow it.
Yeah, I will be out of town and my availability is highly doubtful I can get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's hope that we don't need it, and that the 19th gives us the opportunity to not go into early morning hours discussion or anything else, but just making sure we have it. All right, any other questions on that?
They agree.
They agree. They're cheering for it. They're cheering for it all way. All right. All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. We do have one final agenda item here for other business, but I don't believe we had anything come up in addition after the agenda was published. Any other final questions, comments, thoughts? Apply for into the next week. All right, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned at 5:34. Being a little late, sir. Thank you, everybody.